A young mother finished her evening shift and was on her way home when she suddenly disappeared under strange circumstances. As the police launched their investigation, they quickly uncovered unsettling evidence that led to a shocking truth. This case caught national attention as no one could believe something like this actually happened in real life. Summer Cook was born on December 31, 1985, in the small town of Logan, Ohio. She grew up in a large family with deeply religious parents. From a young age, Summer and her siblings spent a lot of time at the local church, and their family was well known in the community. She was an outgoing, honest person who had no trouble making friends. Summer got along with everyone and was known for her friendly nature. In school, she stayed busy with ballet, played in the jazz band, and participated in theatrical performances. During her high school years, Summer met a boy named William through their church. They lived on the same street, but before that, they didn't know each other very well. The two started dating, and before long, they decided to get married. Over the next few years, Summer and William had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. The family settled close to William's parents, who helped out with the kids almost every day. William's father was a pastor and also ran a small construction business. At one point, the entire family decided to move to Florida after he landed a construction contract there. However, things didn't go as planned, and a few years later, they moved back to Logan. In 2010, Summer decided to divorce William. She got custody of the kids and moved back in with her parents. Since her parents lived on the same street, William and his family were still able to see the children regularly. By the spring of 2011, 25-year-old Summer was dedicating nearly all her time to raising her 3 children, who were 5, 3, and 2 years old at the time. Because of this, she couldn't take on a full-time job, so she worked part-time as a cleaner at a local bank, just a few minutes' drive from her home. Despite her busy schedule, Summer had plans for the future. She wanted to enroll in college to get an education and eventually find a better-paying job. Around this time, she also started dating a man named Adam, who worked as a handyman. On the evening of March 22nd, Summer went to her usual night shift at the bank, which was scheduled to end around 11:20 p.m. Before heading home, she sent a few messages to her boyfriend, Adam, but suddenly stopped responding in the middle of their conversation. At first, Adam thought she might just be busy or running late at work. A bit later, he tried calling her, but Summer didn't answer. Growing concerned, Adam decided to walk over to the bank to check if everything was okay. When he arrived, the first thing Adam noticed was that his car, the one Summer had been using to get to work, was still parked outside. Since her shift had ended almost half an hour ago, he started to feel even more concerned. It was unusual because Summer had always left work at the same time without any delays. He went around to the back door of the bank, which she always used during her shifts, and noticed something behind the dumpster. Lying on the ground were her iPod, car keys, and the battery from her phone. This seemed incredibly suspicious, so Adam immediately called her parents. They confirmed that Summer still hadn't returned home and rushed to the bank. After verifying that the items on the ground did belong to her, they immediately called the police. But, to their surprise, her parents quickly learned that they weren't the first ones who contacted the authorities. Just half an hour before they called the police, there had been another report. 2 women who were out for an evening jog had run past the bank and witnessed something horrifying. They saw 2 people in black ski masks grab a woman and force her into a car. The woman struggled and tried to fight back, but she couldn't escape. At the same time, another witness was nearby and he attempted to save her. However, as he approached, a woman stepped out of the car and pepper-sprayed him. She then got back into the driver's seat and sped off with the kidnappers and their victim. The 2 joggers immediately ran to the police station, which was only a few blocks away, and reported what they had seen. But, instead of springing into action, the officers responded with surprising skepticism. They genuinely thought the women had made the whole thing up, despite their pleas to go and find the abducted person. When the witnesses pressed them to go to the bank and investigate, the officers brushed it off, saying most of their staff were busy conducting traffic stops. Eventually, the women walked to one of their houses, got a car, and drove back to the bank about 20 minutes later. To their surprise, there still wasn't a single police officer at the scene, so they just decided to stay and wait. The officers didn't arrive until nearly an hour later, and even then, they showed little urgency, as if nothing serious had happened. When the husband of one of the women started losing his patience and demanded that they do their job, the police responded with hostility and acted aggressively. Eventually, the officers took action. They determined that the woman who had likely been abducted was Summer. Witnesses also provided a description of the vehicle, a white sedan, that the kidnappers had used to flee the scene. The police issued an alert for the car and then went to talk to Summer's relatives to see if they had any idea who might have wanted to hurt their daughter. Summer's parents told investigators that her relationship with her ex-husband William had been rocky for years, even after the divorce. Summer had told them that William's behavior took a drastic turn right after they got married. He saw himself as deeply religious and demanded complete obedience from her. He controlled who she could talk to and spend time with, expected dinner on the table when he got home, and insisted the house be spotless. He even wouldn't let her go to bed without his permission. On top of this, William actually wanted to take a second wife. Although polygamy was illegal, he believed it was acceptable from a religious standpoint and openly shared his plans with Summer. He browsed websites specifically for women interested in such relationships and was actively searching for someone. At the same time, he told Summer she needed to give him 9 more children on top of the 3 they already had. Besides that, William became increasingly aggressive. He wouldn't let Summer leave the house without him, took away her keys and phone, and tried to control her every move. Eventually, she had enough and decided to file for divorce. But William, as well as his parents, were furious about her decision. He tried to gain full custody of their kids and threatened Summer, saying he'd harm her if she took them away from him. Things got even worse when William found out that Summer was seeing someone new. He already knew Adam, and one day he came across a photo on Adam's social media of him with Summer and the kids. That set him off. William started threatening her again and kept fighting for custody in court, but his threats backfired. After hearing about all of this, the judge sided with Summer and gave her full custody of the kids. William's parents weren't ready to let it go either. They tried to discredit Adam by flooding the police with false claims that he was mistreating the kids. Investigators couldn't find any evidence to support these accusations, but William's parents kept pushing, desperate to regain custody of their grandchildren. Digging deeper, the police uncovered something else. About a year earlier, William's father had started his own church and launched a non-profit organization aimed at helping the homeless and those who had lost their homes. His plan sounded noble. He wanted to build affordable housing for these people. To fund the construction, he began selling lottery tickets and managed to raise several $100,000. But there was a catch. No houses were ever built, and none of the people who bought tickets got their money back. To make things even worse, William's father never gave any explanation about what happened to all the money he'd taken. Around the same time, he lost his license as a priest. While the exact reasons weren't made public, it only added to the questions surrounding him. And just months before Summer disappeared, the family faced yet another blow. They lost their home and were evicted. While the family was still living in their old house, Summer went there to collect the rest of her belongings. She brought Adam along to help load everything into her car and also asked the police to send an officer. She was worried about how her ex-husband's family might react, and her concerns turned out to be justified. William's father immediately became aggressive, demanding that Adam stay off his property. Even with a police officer present, he threatened to shoot and beat Adam. When the officer stepped in to calm things down, William's father lost it and even tried to tackle the officer. That didn't end well. He was arrested and later given a suspended sentence. Investigators also uncovered some unsettling details about William's parents. After William was born, his mother couldn't have more children, which was a devastating blow for her. She became so attached to her grandchildren that she treated them like her own kids. In fact, she even told people that if anything ever happened to William and Summer, she'd take full custody of the children. Summer's parents gave investigators her personal journal, and its contents were heartbreaking. She wrote about how William controlled every part of her life and how his behavior had become more and more aggressive. Summer described feeling like a prisoner in her own home, unable to do anything without his approval. The constant pressure weighed heavily on her, and she often felt like she was living in a nightmare, not reality. After gathering all of this information, the police decided to visit William and his parents, who all lived in the same house. They also discovered that the family owned a car matching the model and color described by witnesses of Summer's abduction. Investigators arrived at their home the day after Summer's disappearance. William claimed that he and his parents had been in town that night. According to him, they had driven to Cleveland about 3 hours away to look at some houses. He added that their car broke down during the trip, forcing them to spend the entire night there, and his parents backed up his story. William claimed he hadn't seen his ex-wife in days, not since he dropped off the kids. But the police weren't just going to take his word for it. They got a search warrant for his house and car, hoping to find something that would disprove his alibi. During the search, investigators found a GPS navigator for a car inside the family's home. After extracting the data, they noticed something odd. The device had been turned off at 5:30 p.m. on the day of Summer's abduction and wasn't turned back on until 7:30 a.m. the next morning. What was odd, though, was that the last location recorded before it was turned off was not in Cleveland, where the family said they'd been looking at houses, but Logan. As for the next morning, the GPS showed that the family arrived at a car wash at 7:30 a.m. The police got their hands on the CCTV footage, which showed all three of them carefully cleaning the car, inside and out, and even changing the tires. By the time investigators had pieced everything together, 8 days had already gone by. They kept searching for Summer around the city and the nearby areas, interviewing people and following up on leads, but nothing seemed to bring them any closer to finding her. Once investigators confirmed that William and his parents had lied about their alibi, they brought all three in for questioning. William and his father denied any involvement in Summer's disappearance, so the detectives shifted their focus to his mother. To their surprise, she confessed almost immediately, claiming that Summer was already dead, and began providing details about what had happened. According to her, the family was furious about the court's decision to grant Summer full custody of the children. They had been trying to convince her to let them spend more time with the kids, but after William's threats and his increasingly aggressive behavior, Summer was too scared to leave her children with them for long. So, the family came up with a plan. They decided to scare Summer into reconsidering the custody arrangement. Their idea was to abduct and intimidate her, then force her to agree to their terms before letting her go. But, things went horribly wrong. After William and his father forced her into the car using a stun gun, William tied her hands with plastic zip ties. Then, he took another one and placed it around her neck. When they realized she was struggling to breathe, they tried to remove it, but none of them had a knife to cut it off. As a result, Summer died, and the family knew they had to get rid of her body. They drove to a nearby town where William's parents regularly attended church. Near the church was a large underground septic tank. Thinking it would be the perfect hiding spot, they dumped her body inside and drove away. Although the woman insisted they never planned to kill Summer, her story seemed highly questionable. Given William's repeated death threats and his father's aggressive behavior toward anyone who restricted his access to the grandchildren, investigators suspected that murder might have been their plan from the start. Police went to the church and discovered Summer's body inside the septic tank. Soon after, medical examiners confirmed that the cause of death aligned with the mother's account, and all three family members were arrested and charged with murder. For Summer's family, the entire ordeal was a devastating blow. Not only had her three children lost their mother, but the police's actions, or lack thereof, raised serious questions and outrage. As we know, the police were alerted to the abduction just minutes after it happened, yet they failed to act for over an hour. Medical experts later confirmed that Summer died about 45 minutes after being kidnapped, meaning there was, potentially, enough time to save her. The police could have immediately begun looking for the vehicle based on pretty detailed witness descriptions. Considering the abduction happened in the evening in a small town with almost no traffic, investigators might have had a chance to intercept William and his parents. Instead, they justified their delay by saying that most of their officers were tied up with something else. What angered the public even more was that the police station was just a few hundred yards from the bank where the abduction took place. It would have taken just minutes to get there, even on foot. Yet, despite the witnesses, no one came to Summer's aid. Another troubling part of the case was the plea deal offered to William's mother. In exchange for confessing and revealing the location of Summer's body, she got a much lighter sentence. She also testified in court, sticking to her story, and was sentenced to just 15 years in prison. This means she could be out in just a few years. As for William and his father, both were sentenced to life in prison. Since Summer's death, her children have been living with her parents. For the first 6 months after the murder, they struggled with how to break the devastating news to the kids that they would never see their mom or dad again. The children kept asking when they would see their mom, as well as their paternal grandparents. Eventually, Summer's parents realized they couldn't keep the truth hidden forever. With the help of a child psychologist, they gradually explained what had happened. At the time, they feared their oldest son might hear the truth from his classmates, as the story had become well known throughout Logan. In fact, strangers would occasionally approach the children on the street to express their condolences. This even led Summer's parents to consider changing the children's last names to shield them from being forever linked to the tragedy. As of today, Summer's children have grown up, and the family stays out of the public eye. As for William's mother, she's set to be released in 2028. It's unclear whether she'll be legally banned from contacting her grandchildren, but given everything we know about this case, it's possible she may try to reconnect with them. Share your thoughts on this story in the comments section and don't forget to press the like button if you enjoyed my video.